Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, I am going to be discussing the tier list for the ladder for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. What is going to be the best to climb with, and what is going to get you the most amount of wins in a best of one format for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel with the newest set released with Kashtira. So, yeah, basically this is just what has changed with the newest set, and realistically has anything. So let's quickly do the explanation, and there are not nearly as many decks as I've done in the past, so this will go a little bit faster, but there are some new additions that we do need to talk about. So first and foremost, Antipater, it's still good. Yeah, it's still good. Antipater still has the ability to make an unbreakable board, going first, and, you know, Block Dragon is a powerhouse in and of itself, and sure, you do have to deal with Max C, but honestly, you can also just deck your opponent out with Max C, or just make a board that they literally cannot beat, so there's that. It's still good for climbing. I don't know what else to say. It's good. Yeah. Moving on, we have ourselves Black Wings. Black Wings is just... wrong one. Black Wings is just not good. I'm going to put it in Rogue. You can still climb with it. It's still effective at climbing. It still has a decent shot at winning games. I'm actually just going to move everything down one. It's not good. It's too inconsistent for a best of one format. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's the biggest thing, is just like its inconsistency. It doesn't really have a great option for going second. It doesn't really have much in the... even when it goes first, its end board can be pretty lackluster and can be easily broken. So it's just kind of mid. You really do need to have like something else entirely, like a strange combo that ends on like Mirror Jade or something like that. Which isn't really likely, but I don't know. There's just not really much that this deck does. Branded. Branded is pretty good. Yeah. Branded is one of the best decks. Top 3, I would say. It still is. It has been for a while. It will continue to be. It's very strong. It has the ability to go first. It has the ability to go second. It can play through Max C pretty well by ending on significantly fewer stuff, but still having those interactions necessary. So... all in all, it's just a good deck for a best of one. And it's a good deck for a format with Max C. Next up, we have Chaos. Chaos received a whole bunch of new support with things like Chaos Angel, Chaos Creator, Chaos Witch, and such. And even with that being said, it's still bad. This is not 2005 anymore. Chaos just doesn't work. Don't know what else to tell you. Most of the time... I mean, Chaos isn't bad, but it's like... most of the time, you'd rather just be playing Dragon Link. So there's that. Dark World... Dark World doesn't do anything. Every time I've played against Dark World, they have done a whole bunch of stuff. They've looped a card out of my hand. And then they just... ended on nothing. Every time. I've never seen them actually do anything. So, at least to me, and as someone who has also played them, I don't know what this deck does, especially with Silva Band. The main point is like, oh, you go Silva, you dump 2 cards out of your opponent's hand with Cerulean, and then you basically end on nothing, or like an Apollosa, and hope that works, right? And now your opponent has 2 cards in hand, hopefully. But now, without Silva, I really don't know what this deck does. It doesn't do anything. I've just seen it spin its wheels and end on nothing after 10 minutes. So it's really just, I don't know. It's also slow, which is another big thing. It's not great for climbing. Just not going to happen. Next up, we have Draco Slayer. I wish I could put this higher. Draco Slayer is probably the best of the Pendulum decks, which is saying something, because I'm putting it in Rogue. Okay, it's not the best of the Pendulum decks, but it's one of the coolest. And honestly, it's still just Rogue. It's just not very good. don't really know what to say. Hey, Cashiera is nice and all, and yeah, can absolutely lock down your pendulum zones, which does matter, but that really doesn't matter all that much, because that's not the biggest problem with this deck. It's inconsistent, it doesn't really have the ability to play through Max C, it kind of just needs to actually have a play that it can do through Max C, and it just doesn't. I guess you could technically do, like, maybe some Baguska stuff, but again, it's like, well, everyone has the outs to Baguska, everyone is able to play around that, so it's not really that great. And all in all, even its end boards aren't insane. I mean, it's just like every other Pendulum deck, which most people can either play through or interact with to prevent them from even getting to that point. So it's not like it's incredible in any capacity. So yeah, it's just Rogue. Next up, we have Dragonlink. I'm actually going to move Branded down a tier, because I do think I actually misspoke and said Branded was a top 3 deck, and that is a lie. Dragonlink has taken its place. Dragonlink is incredible. Dragonlink is very strong. The Bystials, turns out, are very good against tier, which happens to be everywhere right now, and just in general. So, on top of that, they actually end up on pretty good boards with decent follow-up, with quite a few hand traps or points of interaction in hand, while also being able to end on things like Regained and Beast, which can make a problematic board even more difficult to actually beat, because now not only do you have to deal with monsters, like for example Borderland, which already is a problem in and of itself, but now you also have to deal with Beast and Branded Regained, consistently getting additional advantage every time you want to do something. So it is a bit more difficult to actually end or like beat Dragonlink. So I am going to put this at tier 1 as the more or less third best deck. Although I guess I'd still put Branded up here in tier 1 as well. Two very strong decks. Just Dragonlink is a little bit better. Next up we have Exosister. Exosister is not great. Honestly, I kind of want to put it lower. I'm going to put it in tier 3 because I don't think it's that bad for climbing. I think in a best of 1, it does have a lot going for it in terms of just like, hey, if you roll a good matchup, yeah, you're just going to kind of auto win. Maybe if you play against tier, you'll win. Maybe not, who knows. But if you play against like Dragonlink or Branded or Antipater or something like that, yeah, you'll probably have a good time. But all in all, I really don't see it being all that good. And most of the time when I do end up seeing it, it tends to be either they drew literally a god hand, where they just drew every point of interaction going first and I drew nothing. Or it's an unplayable mess of a hand that does nothing and they just scoop. I very rarely see any in between. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it either looks incredibly good, and even then it can still be easily broken, or it's terrible. And it can also be easily broken. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, sometimes you can OTK, sometimes you literally can't do anything. It just kind of depends on the deck that your opponent is playing. Next up we have Hero. Hero is good. I mean, hey, when you set up 3 floodgates through your combo, it's pretty good, right? Obviously it loses to Max C, but what doesn't lose to Max C? So that's why it's in Rogue. Don't really want to talk about this anymore. Next up, the first new deck, Cashiera, is terrible. It's in tier 3. It's kind of just rank 7 control, and I know some people are going to be like, no, Kashtira's crazy, it locks your zones, it does this, it does that, yada yada. No, it's horribly inconsistent. It's basically just rank 7 turbo, and we don't really have that many like great rank 7s, except for Galaxy Tomahawk, but like, what are you making with Galaxy Tomahawk? Unless you're playing a whole bunch of bricks, which makes your deck even more inconsistent, which makes it so that you're less likely to actually be able to get into that Galaxy Tomahawk. Like, there isn't really a great way to play this deck. Yes, again, sure, you can lock zones. That is a thing that you could do. But that's not realistically going to happen. Or at least you're not going to lock enough zones to make it worthwhile. Unless you happen to play against that one Pendulum player. And then, yeah, the locking of zones matters. Right. But for the most part, it feels like the game plan is just like Fenrir Unicorn control, which is not the greatest. It's not very strong, right? So it's much better as a going second build, if you want to go second. I think it's a little bit stronger, but even with all of that being said, it's not very strong. It doesn't really have enough going for it. It's missing out on all of its good cards. Theosis, the Field Spell, Pressure Planet, and Arise Heart are literally the cards that are needed to make this deck work. Like, Birth is good, yes. Unicorn is good, yes. Fenrir is good, yes. But they need kind of the other cards, especially Unicorn. Unicorn with just Birth kind of sucks. Unicorn with Theosis is good because that makes it a one-card combo and you can actually do stuff with it. But Unicorn with just Birth is kind of mid. So a lot of stuff like that where it's just like, yeah, it just kind of needs more stuff. It's still good, but it's not insane. And yeah, I'm actually going to put it underneath the Exosister. Next up, we have Labyrinth. Labyrinth is good. Don't know what else to say. It just gained Chaos Angel, which now means that without even playing a tuner, you have the ability to go into the Chaos Angel with, I believe it's like, it's not Sophie Torby. I think it's Chandelier, and you're 8. And then you get a free banish, which is super cool. On top of that, it's just a good deck still, you know, being able to consistently loop additional resources and then bounce cards your opponent controls and yada yada. Yeah, it still has good interactions. It's a strong deck. Next up, we have Punk. I don't know, Punk is just Adamantipator, but worse. And loses way harder to Max C. Don't know what else to say. I've heard there's like a Punk Kashtira build running around that is apparently good. Not sure, haven't seen it. Literally never have I seen it. So can't say. Next up, we have Rika. Rika is... Where do I put Rika? Rika is strong, and while, yes, it does lose to Max C, which I've mentioned previously, the difference, I think, with Rika is that the end board actually does a lot more. Similarly to Adamantipator, where it's like, yeah, you could also just end on a really strong end board, and yeah, it's not going to be, like, the same as Adamantipator, where you can play through the Max C, end on a really strong board, and then just pray that your opponent didn't draw the out, which is possible. Rika can't really do that. The board doesn't really set up enough interactions to really facilitate that, nor does it end on something that just like stops your opponent from playing, like Adamantipator with the barrier statue. But all things considered, I still think it's very strong and definitely has a lot of power behind it. The ability to tribute anything for cost is pretty good, and you know, lots of stuff like that where it's just like they just have better cards sometimes, and it's pretty consistent. The problem is piloting it, actually being able to play it at a high enough level to make it work. That's the biggest issue. Next up, we have Runic, which I'm going to say, this is hard to say because this could be like Runic for hire Sprite, which is pretty good, or this could be like Runic Stun, which is not very good, or this could be Runic Naturia, or what have you. I'm going to put this at tier 2 for now, because Runic as an engine is very good. But Runic as a deck is not. And if we're accounting for like Runic Naturia, and Runic Furhire, and Runic Sprite, and Pure Runic, it's probably somewhere around tier 2. However, with that being said, I think that there are significantly better decks, but we'll talk about those in a second, and there are significantly worse decks. So things like Naturia and stuff like that I think are lower. So there you go. Tier 2. We'll put it there for now. Sky Striker is bad. Just bad. It's bad. Next up we have Sprite. So Sprite is probably the second best deck. I think tier is a little bit above it. Here, we'll just rank that right now. There we go. Yeah, I think tier is a little bit above it. Tier and Sprite are still very strong, even with limitations and stuff like that. But most notably, Sprite has several builds that are very good. They have the Runic Furhire Sprite. They have Sprite Melfi, or more or less just pure Sprite. And then they also have, I believe it's like Sprite Tri-Brigade, and a myriad of other things as well. You could even play more Melfis and make it Sprite Melfi. You could play Sprite Runic without the for hire stuff. So there's a lot of different things that you can play, which really makes it very versatile and very strong. I mean, I've been playing Sprite for hire, and it's dominating. It's very good. So yeah, there you go. As for tier is tier. It's been doing good for a while now. It has kind of resurged thanks to things like Grapha and the Kashtira cards, most notably Fenrir, being able to just give them an additional body to have like an additional point of interaction, and specifically really good for going second, so that you can actually like force out something from your opponent by threatening battle phase, similar to Pink, but like is still good going first. So a little bit better for the for tier there as opposed to for Sprite. Next up we have Sword Soul. Sword Soul is good. It's a strong deck. Oh my gosh, let me stop. There we go. Yeah, Sword Soul has the ability to end on Protoss Call Dark, which is kind of crazy. Being able to literally destroy every single one of the decks above it. Just Protoss Call Dark just kind of kills all of those decks. Except for maybe Sprite? Maybe Sprite. And I guess maybe Labyrinth, depending on their hand. So there's that. But all things considered, it still has the ability to go into Chisha Baron Pass, which is still decent. It's really good for climbing due to its simplicity. It also has the ability to go second extremely well. It's probably the best deck in terms of going second in engine power that we have up at the top here. It's stronger than Kashtira at the moment because we can't really make a Rise Heart. I would say it's probably stronger than Dragon Link as well in terms of going second. Though Dragon Link is still very, very good at going seconds as well. Same with Tier. So it's not like it's winning so much more because it goes second. But you can also build it specifically to go second and then, you know, get that leg up on your opponent because most people want to go first anyway. So there you go. Next up, we have Stun. Stun is actually pretty decent because, hey, no one is prepared for it. It's not that no one is prepared for it. It's more so that just, like, sometimes you just hard win a game and you only need to win the one game. So it's not like your opponent is going to side deck a whole bunch of back row hate or, like, I don't know what else. So, there you go. Sorry. Next up, we have Thunder Dragons. Thunder Dragons are in an interesting spot, I would say, because technically you can play them with, like, Dragon Link and then they're absolutely insane, but if we're talking more of a pure Thunder Dragon build, I still think that it's pretty decent. Sure, Colossus isn't insane right now, but it does shut down things like Sprite, Dragon Link, and Branded, which is pretty nice. But it's not really doing a whole lot outside of that. You do kind of need Colossus to stick around and not be negated, which isn't exactly the easiest of things to do, but all in all, I still think it's a good deck. Especially for a best of one. And of course, you can also just play Dragon Link stuff to make it a little bit more robust and more powerful overall. Next up, we have Trap Trick. Trap Trick, I'm gonna put at the top of tier 3. I think that is just one of the better ones to climb with, mostly due to the fact that people hate playing against this deck. That's like the biggest reason. People hate playing against this deck, and so they see a Trap Trick card come down, and they go, nah, I'm out. I'm not even going to try. Which is fair, because it's an awful deck to play against. But it does mean that I think a lot of people just immediately leave, and you will get a lot of free wins, making it a little bit higher than it probably should be. However, on top of that, it also is just a decently good deck. Being able to main deck like evenly matched and actually gain advantage off of it going first is pretty nice. It also is just a nice resource loop that can OTK for some reason. I don't know why this control deck can OTK so efficiently, but it can. So there's stuff like that. It has easy Zeus lines, which is not as good anymore, but it's still decent. It makes lots of rank 4s. It can play things like Gravediggers, Trap Hole, which is very, very good. Being able to negate the tier cards, being able to negate the Labyrinth cards, being able to negate the Bestials. It's just overall a decently well-positioned deck at the moment. It's not insane, but it is pretty well-positioned. And then we have Valence, which is bad. I don't know what to tell you, but it's everything that is wrong with Pendulum decks currently in the format, which is it just takes way too long to do more or less nothing and requires a lot of setup to do more or less nothing. There is a lot better stuff that you could do. The fact that it locks you into only utilizing Valence cards from the main deck from the main deck is a problem, because now you can't go for like Electromite into Astrograph Sorcerer into additional resources into yada yada. So now you have to go for something else entirely. You have to go for a Valence card or something like that. So all in all, I just don't think it's that strong. The new cards kind of didn't do anything. It's still Valence. It's still doing its same thing. Yeah, now it's more consistent with how it does that thing, but again, similarly to True Draco, it just kind of doesn't do enough for a Pendulum deck. So there you go. Anyway, that's going to be it for the tier list. Where would I put regular Pendulum? Probably up here in tier 3 somewhere. It's not that much higher. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode, or for this tier list. That's the ranking that I have. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, and like us very much, so appreciate it. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.